and yet you flipped. What does the Israel lobby have over your head? What do they got on you? I'm curious. About that. But yes, Bernie Sanders actually contradicted himself. So when people talk about Bernie's consistent, he's not. He is what I like to call a Democrat with an I next to his name. Everybody's like, oh my God, he's an independent. No, he's not. He's truly an independent. He would be working out, challenging them left and right, but he doesn't. He does not challenge power. He concedes to it. So there was a recent showing of Bernie Sanders, and he talked about a ceasefire. And this just shows the type of person Bernie Sanders is. And then after that, I'm going to show you guys something that really just took me for a loop. So Bernie Sanders is getting respect from AIPAC. And if anybody knows AIPAC is, or AIPAC, is they are the Israel lobby. One of the top Israel lobbies in the nation. So this just shows you who Bernie Sanders really is. And before I show this, I just want to say it's just like what Dr. Maya Angelou said. When someone tells you who they are the first time, believe them. And Bernie is showing us who he really is. Do you believe him? It's very short. Let's go over it.
In terms of a permanent ceasefire, I don't know how you could have a permanent ceasefire with Hamas, who has said before October 7th and after October 7th that they want to destroy Israel. They want a permanent war. I don't know how you have a permanent ceasefire with an attitude like that.
So he's doubling down on basically saying, no, we don't want a permanent ceasefire, even though a permanent ceasefire would save lives. So Bernie Sanders does not want to save lives. You heard that right. That's not some spin. That's not me being hyperbolic. He does not want to save lives. Because, like I said earlier in the last segment, in order to actually exchange hostages, you need a ceasefire. If you're actually interested in exchanging hostages and releasing hostages, then you would do a ceasefire. But that's not what Bernie is about. Bernie doesn't want it. And he's sounding a lot like AIPAC right now. AIPAC, whatever. Let's go over it just a little bit.
In terms of a permanent ceasefire, I don't know how you could have a permanent ceasefire with Hamas, who has said before October 7th and after October 7th that they want to destroy Israel. They want a permanent war. I don't know.
Actually, they never said that. How do I know? Well, I'm going to read this. H word affirms that its conflict is with the Zionist project, not with the Jews because of their religion. H word does not wage a struggle against the Jews because they are Jewish, but wages a struggle against the Zionists who occupy Palestine. Yet, it is the Zionists who constantly identify Judaism and the Jews with their own colonial project and illegal entity. That's from their own charter. Basically, they just want the illegal occupation to end. It's not something that they want to do forever. It's not something that they want to do in the first place. That's what they say. Let's continue what Bernie says.
Know how you have a permanent ceasefire with an attitude like that.
So that's not how their attitude is. It's literally in their charter. So that being the case, then why else would you not want a ceasefire? By the way, it is legal by international law to resist illegal occupation. That's exactly what it is. Now, let me share with you guys this. Even former Bernie Sanders delegates are saying, Bernie, you need to be for a permanent ceasefire. It says over 300 Bernie Sanders DNC delegates calling him to support a ceasefire in Gaza. This was a month ago. So let's take a look. It says hundreds of former delegates to the Democratic National Convention for Senator Bernie Sanders during his 2020 and 2016 presidential campaigns are calling on the senator to demand an Israeli ceasefire in Gaza as progressives and the left grow increasingly frustrated with this refusal to do so. And a letter first reported by The Intercept was signed by 330 delegates who are urging Sanders to back a ceasefire, support to end Israel's blockade and occupation of Gaza, and call for an end to U.S. funding of Israel's genocidal war against Palestinians. They also asked Sanders to introduce companion legislation to House lawmakers' ceasefire resolution, which lawmakers put forward last month with 18 co-sponsors. Quote, your presidential campaigns and your legislative work in the Senate have not only reshaped the national discourse regarding Israel's violent occupation of Palestine, but also bravely confronted Congress's unchecked support for Israel in terms of military aid and weapons. We, the undersigned 330 delegates from your 2016 and 2020 campaigns, write to ask you to stand against war and violence once more. End quote. It says, indeed, in the past, Senator Sanders has been one of the only voices in Congress, perhaps the only voice in the Senate, to criticize the U.S.'s relationship with Israel. Just in April, Senator Sanders sent a letter to President Biden and Secretary Blinken calling for the administration to undertake a shift in U.S. policy regarding the nation's support for Israel and to ensure that the U.S.'s endless weapons transfer to Israel weren't being used to conduct gross violations of human rights. Says while all the other signatories of that letter, including lawmakers like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, have now called for a ceasefire in Gaza. However, Sanders has not, and his refusal to call for a ceasefire has been viewed as a major letdown to many left-wing Americans, many of whom cite Sanders as an inspiration for their participation in the political sphere. So I want to share this as well. So this is something I want to bring out as well. This person says, hey, is this it? No. Okay. It says Sanders' refusal to call for a ceasefire has been seemingly inconsistent with his own views on the issue. In an op-ed in The Guardian earlier this month, Sanders wrote that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is dire and getting worse by the minute, and that a stop to the bombing is critical to save innocent lives and secure a safe return of the hostages. He added that the conditions in occupied Palestine were already horrific and inhumane before Israel's current siege. So he said that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza is dire and getting worse by the minute, and to stop the bombing is critical to save lives and secure the safe return of hostages. My question to Senator Sanders is, what changed? Why do you feel so differently now? Because apparently you obviously flip-flopped on your own position. You said you thought a ceasefire would be right. You thought that would be the correct position, and yet you flipped. What does the Israel lobby have over your head? What do they got on you? I'm curious. I'm curious about that. But yes, Bernie Sanders actually contradicted himself. So when people talk about Bernie's consistent, he's not. He hasn't been consistent for quite some time. Let me see. Now, for anybody who thinks, oh my God, October 7th, October 7th, October 7th, let me share something with you guys. And I honestly really wish Bernie would read this, but he probably would never, because he's like, I don't want to read that. This is out of the Electronic Intifada. If you guys have not, then I highly suggest you guys bookmark this publication because it is valuable. And I just shared it in the chat for you guys. So it says Israeli violence escalated in the lead up to October 7th. Let me enlarge this, just make that a little bit bigger. All right, so that everybody can see. All right. So since October 7th, whenever I've been interviewed by Western media outlets, I'm always asked one question. Do you condemn Hamas attacks against Israel on 7th of October? It's as if the conflict between Israel and Palestine began on 7th of October, not 75 years ago. The Western media's condemnation of Operation Al-Aqsa Flood have been uniform and provide only a limited view of the conflict. These media outlets have situated Al-Aqsa Flood entirely in an Israeli context of surprise and shock, while with little understanding of the depth of the conflict. So let me go here. It says Israeli escalations before Al-Aqsa Flood. So this is before October 7th. It says the current Israeli government led by Netanyahu was formed in December 2022 and described by Western Arab and Israeli media outlets as the most right-wing Israeli government ever to hold office. Under Netanyahu's leadership, religious parties forcefully returned to the political arena with significant influence. Opposition leader Yair Lapid even warned about the potential risks posed by the new government, remarking that Israel could turn into a halakhic state, meaning one ruled by Jewish law. So, just as an aside, when we talk about, like, for instance, the evangelicals, the far-right Christians who are within, let's say, the Republican Party, and they're trying to turn the United States into a theocracy, well, that's the Christian version of basically what they're trying to do in Israel. Instead of it being a secular government, then it would be a theocratic government ruled by Jewish law, versus here in the United States, it will be basically ruled by what they say Christian law. All right, so let's continue. It says Israeli escalations have intensified in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza since the formation of the Netanyahu government. From the 1st of January to September 3rd to the 30th of September 2023, the Israeli army and settlers killed 234 Palestinians, including 45 children in the occupied Palestinian territory, according to the rights group Al-Mezan. And before October 7th, the total number of Palestinians imprisoned in Israel was 4,746. October 7th was not a unmitigated, unprovoked attack. It was a response. It was a response to what Israel and the IDF have been doing to Palestinians for years. So when people are like, oh my God, do you condemn October 7th? Ask them if they condemn October 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, September 30th, 29th, 28th, 27th, 26th, 25th, and keep on going back. Do they condemn those? Do they condemn what happened in 2014 when thousands of Palestinians were killed? Do they condemn that? Always ask that question. Always respond with the question. It says September of 2023, Ben-Gvir imposed a new order to reduce the visits received by Palestinian prisoners from once a month to once every 2 months. He had previously implemented retaliatory measures against prisoners, depriving them of fresh bread and revoking many of the modest rights they had achieved through protest. Furthermore, Israeli occupation authorities have even filled in water wells in the West Bank to push Palestinians off their land. Journalist Levy described this as one of the most diabolical deeds of the occupation. So let me share this with you guys, because the Palestinian resistance was at their wits' end before October 7th. This is out of Haaretz. This is from Gordon Levy. We even destroyed their water wells. Oh man, let me see. I forgot. This is paywall. I can get around that. All right. So let's do. Sorry, guys. Let me share this really quick so you guys can see. Where'd it go? Oh, it's right there. All right. So here is the article. We even destroy their water wells. That see there, that's a cement truck, and that's their water wells that they are for Palestinians. It says the cement mixer vomited out the grayish liquid, which made a noise as it flowed noisily into the water wells, clogging them. Standing there were soldiers who served as guards, the civil administration employees who devised this evil plan, the laborers who carried it out, and the peasants who saw their sustenance snuffed out for eternity. The soldiers tried to disperse them, as one might shoo stray dogs. The concrete continued to pour out, and the people of the civil administration verified that it covered everything. Soon, all three wells were sealed. It happened last Wednesday, south of Hebron, near Farwar refugee camp. It was the work of the devil, one of the most diabolical deeds of the occupation, and the competition is fierce. To the water wells, the spring that pushes the mountain. There my love will still find spring water, groundwater, and river water. Naomi Shermer wrote in 1982 in El Barot Hemayim. How lovely it is to sing that the wells of public sing-alongs, and how Zionist this song is, like all her songs. So basically, they did this. It says Arab hatred, apartheid, brutality, and now even an evil now cover the spring and groundwater and the false love for the land of Israel. Those who plug up farmers' wells are motivated by pure evil, and anyone who chokes off spring water hates the land. It says evil apartheid has many faces. This clogging up of wells in which no blood was shed and no people were arrested is one of the ugliest. No security lie or pretext can hide the concrete covered wells, nor can the excuse of law and order only pure and evil. Even if it's not the most horrific of the crimes committed every day in its territories, it's one of the ugliest sealing up water wells. So they literally stopped the water from flowing in Palestine. And this also happened before October 7th. Israel has been escalating this themselves. Says Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, who once stated that there's no such thing as Palestinian people, called in March 2023 for the Palestinian town of Huwara to be wiped out following attacks on Palestinians and their property launched by Israeli settlers in February. The months before the Al-Aqsa flood witnessed escalation upon it by Israel. First one, Israeli soldiers threatening Palestinian women in Hebron with attack dogs and forcing them to strip naked. We already covered that earlier. Israeli extremists targeting Christians in Jerusalem, spitting at them as they left a church on the Via Dolorosa. Israeli settlements surged with 28,208 units given the go-ahead in the West Bank and East Jerusalem in 2022, a 30% increase from 2021. By the way, Hamas is only in Gaza. They're not in the West Bank. So therefore, the attacks in the West Bank, why are they attacking them? Shall we continue? It says Israel raids on Al-Aqsa Mosque have escalated under Netanyahu, driven by right-wing ministers. It is impossible to list all the Israeli escalations and violations in the lead up to October 7th. Home demolitions, imprisonments, humiliations, and killings. There's simply too many to name. So, there is a complete and total disregard of the lives of Palestinians because ultimately, what happened on October 7th was just an excuse to continue to destroy not only Palestinians, but to destroy their spirit and the soul of Palestine, so that Palestine will never live again. It's ultimately what it's about. And so the fact that Bernie Sanders is saying, "Oh, well, this is going on," the Hamas wants to continue this. No, that's you have it flipped. Israel wants to continue this until Palestine is wiped off the map. And so when there's no more Palestinians, then that's when Israel will stop.